My name is Walter Hartwell White. I live at 308 Negra Arroyo Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87104. This is my confession.
It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another one. In this video, I'll be doing a review of Breaking Bad and El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. Stay tuned, we'll be right back to talk bad. That was terrible, but I'm gonna leave it in. Alright, before we jump into this, if you are not a subscriber, consider subscribing to join our community and smash the like button if you are enjoying the content. If you're a fan of my Breaking Bad content, I'll be starting my Better Call Saul reactions starting on January 3rd, every Sunday for the time being. So if you want to be notified when I do those reactions, make sure to press the bell button on the bottom right corner. That's enough of me babbling, let's get right into this review. Spoiler alert though, before we get started, we'll be talking spoilers from both the show and El Camino. So click off if you haven't watched yet, and I assume you have, cause why else would you be here? Okay, so let's start with an overall score of the show first. I would give this show overall a 9.5 out of 10. Before I watched the show, I've heard a lot of people calling Breaking Bad the best show on television, and I always thought that it was either biased or exaggeration. But after watching, I can definitely honestly understand or see why people have such a high praise for the show and they give it such a high prestigious label. I mean, it's not just about one thing or one criteria.
You're goddamn right.
The show obviously has phenomenal writing. The writing is complete, for lack of a better word. And what I mean by that is that nothing is wasted. The writers on this show are the most attentive to details that I have witnessed from all the shows that I have watched. Unlike other shows or movies, nothing is ignored or brushed off. Everything, all the conflict, everything that happens, even little things, are resolved. For example, the storyline earlier on where Marie steals the tiara is a classic example of a small thing that is dealt with. That would have been something that any regular show or movie would have just ignored or would have come with a classic, cheesy kind of resolution fast. But the writers on this show made it resolve itself in a very natural and organic way. And that's another thing. Nothing feels forced in the show. Everything is organic. Another thing that I absolutely enjoyed is how things or people and their actions parallel one another at some point in the story, and how everything comes full circle. And again, it's not forced. It happens naturally, and I think that's key. It happens as it's supposed to. It doesn't happen just for the sake of happening. As an example, I love how Gus and his friend's story that we saw flashbacks of paralleled those of Jesse and Walt. Those two stories were very similar, and they even made them visually feed off of one another or parallel one another by having the Gus crying over the death of his friend match the scene where Walt mourns over the death of Hank. And I know I said Walt and Jesse, but in this case that's just the way it happened, and it goes back to what I said. It was organic like that. If they wanted to make that work with Walt and Jesse, it would not have been organic, obviously. So they didn't change it to make it forced so that it looks exactly the same, if that makes any sense. Other examples of this are Walt's speech or his little talk with Walter Jr. about his late father. That is like a great way to foreshadow what's to come. It foreshadowed Walt Jr. and his father Walt's relationship later on at the end. Or maybe foreshadowing isn't really the right word, but it's just that it sets that final confrontation in a way that is perfect. Or even the scene where Walt is in the crawl space. Visually, that's identical to the final scene of Walt, where he's shot and bleeding out. Oh, and also another thing that I thought was extremely clever and very effective was the bottle episode with the fly. That episode single-handedly spelled out everything that was going to happen to Walt. Much like the fly, Walt saw his enemies and even his competition as contamination. And he did everything in his power to destroy them, literally kill his enemies and his competition, which he did, from Gus to Mike, to him ordering the inmates to be killed, and so on. And in that Fly episode, it was Jesse who ultimately helped save Walt. Obviously, in the end, although Jesse didn't kill the men, meaning Jack and his crew, he was a big part of why Walt was able to destroy them or kill them. Walt would not have been able to carry out his plan if Jesse wasn't captured. So in a way, it was Jesse who saved him by trapping the quote-unquote contamination. The next thing that I do want to bring up is definitely the dialogue. This show has some of the best dialogues I've heard in a TV show. Most of these dialogues, believe it or not, are dialogue between Walt and Skyler. The I am the danger being the most memorable.
Who are you talking to right now? Who is it you think you see? Do you know how much I make a year? I mean, even if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. I am not in danger, Skyler. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No, I am the one who knocks.
But there's also the part where Skyler talks about how she's waiting for Walt to die.
You want to take away my children? What's the plan?
I don't know! This is the best I could come up with, okay? I will count every minute that the kids are away from here, away from you, as a victory. But you're right, it's a bad plan. I don't have any of your magic, Walt. I don't know what to do. I'm a coward. All I can do is wait for the cancer to come back.
The moral of the story is, I chose a half measure when I should have gone all the way. I'll never make that mistake again.
Outside of writing and dialogue though, the show also has some top-notch performances from all the cast. Not just the actor of Walt and Jesse, which were obvious top-notch performances, but also Mike, Skyler, Marie, Walt Jr., and even Saul, even Uncle Jack and Todd. Like, everyone played their character to perfection. So much so that I had a hard time kind of picturing that actor or actress outside of their character for a little bit after I watched the show. The writing and dialogue wouldn't really be effective or impactful if the acting is amiss.
I made a mistake. It's my own fault.
But the cast do it so well that the writing and dialogue makes its impact. The next thing I want to cover is the cinematography and the camera work. The cinematography and camera work is definitely unique and pretty awesome. At first, I didn't really understand it, or it was a little jarring, but as it went on, I got used to it, and it actually became one of my favorite things about the show, watching some of these awesome camera work and cinematography. It's so good that it slowly becomes part of the show's identity. What I mean by that is that it becomes such a part of the show and how it presents itself that if the cinematography doesn't follow its usual trend, you notice, or at least I noticed. For example, the scene where Lydia is poisoned is a classic example. In that scene, the camera is on her steering the cup. Now, usually they do some clever and cool transition, but in that case they didn't do that, and I noticed. And the reason why they didn't do a transition was because obviously it was an important moment. She was unknowingly going to drink the poisoned drink, which would later lead to her demise. There's other moments like that, but this one really stood out to me. Aside from all of that though, the show also has some of the best character development I've seen. And not just Walt or Jesse's characters. All characters go through a character arc, and a believable and an organic one. They adapt to their environments and the situations they're put in. And it's not an exaggeration. It's organic, it's realistic. As someone watching, you buy that they said that, or made that decision, or didn't make that decision. And as far as Walt's character development goes, I feel like each season presented one aspect of Walt's character change. Season 1 demonstrated his desperation, leading him to start cooking meth for financial security. Season 2 brought out his vulnerable side by having him having to adapt to being a drug dealer and all the good and the bad that come with it. Season 3 presented his opportunistic nature, his greed started to take over. In Season 4, we saw how his experience from all of the things he went through made him find a sort of balance. He was adapting to the new normal. He was content with where he was and what he was doing. But in the last season, in Season 5, we saw his greed overspill. His overconfidence and hunger for more eventually led to his downfall. He wasn't just a normal high school teacher that was cooking meth for financial security anymore. He wasn't doing it out of desperation anymore. He was building an empire. Like he said, he wasn't in the meth business anymore.
Jesse, you asked me if I was in the meth business or the money business. Neither. I'm in the empire business.
He was building an empire as a drug lord and doing everything he could, everything in his power to retain his power, no matter how illegal, immoral, or wrong his actions were. Now, Walter White has done tons of shady stuff, but the few things that really stand out to me are putting a hit on the inmates, letting Jane die, and poisoning a kid. These are like some of the worst things he's done. And obviously, he's also killed people. So that's another part of it. So for all of these reasons, I would give this show a solid 9.5 out of 10 rating. It's not a 10 because as great as the show was, each season became better and better, which means earlier seasons could have been fine-tuned or improved. But in the grand scheme of things, 9.5 out of 10 I think is a fair rating. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's switch to El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. If you have watched my reaction, you know my rating and my general thoughts about it. But I would give El Camino like a 6 out of 10. And that's me being a little generous. If I wasn't generous, I would give it like maybe a 5 out of 10. But because of the connection to Breaking Bad and again, being a little biased because I love Breaking Bad, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. The reason why I'm giving it a 6 out of 10 is because I feel that the film was more an extended episode of Breaking Bad, or it felt like that, rather than a feature film. It had nothing to make it stand on its own. It lacked the action, drama, comic relief, solid dialogue that Breaking Bad was known for and was praised for. It felt that the movie only had a central and very basic plotline, which was Jesse trying to escape and get a new identity. Now, if it was just a way to tie loose ends and close the chapter, it was good, but it obviously didn't have anything to make it stand on its own. Some people may even call El Camino fan service, and I would somewhat agree with that. Like, I think the writers could have added a subplot to the main plot to make it even better. Something as simple as having Jesse not only having to escape from the cops, but also from people who may have come after him to take revenge for Jack's death. And the entire movie could have been a run against the clock for Jesse to avoid both, getting arrested and getting killed by Jack's crew. And to make things even more interesting, what they could have done is had this gang of people loyal to Jack going after Skyler and Walt Jr. And they could have had Jesse having to choose between just running away or saving them. And I feel like a twist like that would have made for a better experience and would have added something more to the film and would have helped make it stand on its own. But that's pretty much my thoughts and opinions and my review of Breaking Bad and El Camino. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are about the show and the film down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash the like button and share. And also subscribe if you haven't already to join our community. Again, I'll be starting my Better Call Saul reactions starting on January 3rd, every Sunday for the time being. So if you want to be notified when those reactions are posted, make sure to press the bell on the bottom right corner. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.